The floor entry permit and a guide. The boss asked again with a nervous expression. Truly, is that all you want? If the boss could protect everyone simply by handing out that entry permit, then there was no reason not to. Also, since he'd be doing that in order to protect this land, he wasn't exactly going against that order from the unknown source, either. Jinwoo nodded his head. You will not bring harm upon my daughter. Suddenly, Jinwoo felt Essel's glance. A monster worrying about his daughter, is it? Jinwoo was inwardly surprised but didn't forget to nod his head regardless. The boss pondered for a short while, before a smile formed on his face. We'll do that, then. The moment he agreed to hand it over, the boss felt as if a persistently annoying aching tooth had finally come loose or some such. If the event of stopping the prophetized advent of calamity by handing over a scrap of paper didn't qualify as a matter to rejoice, then what else would? Confirming the contents of the scroll, a thick smile formed on Jinwoo's lips. Rarity. Type. A permit allowing you to enter the 81st floor of the demon's castle. Can only be used on the 80th floor's floor transfer magic circle. He was suspicious of whether he could get an item from monsters through nothing more than just dialogue. But this was really the entry permit he was looking for. Jinwoo rolled the scroll back up and sent it to his inventory. Hey, is it fine if we get going now? Jinwoo urged Essel and turned towards the exit. Wait, I'll be sharing my experience points with my companion. The thing about sharing experience points got on his nerves slightly, but thankfully, there was the clause about rate of contribution, which meant that, as long as he didn't give his companion a chance to fight, the experience points wouldn't be divided at all. So, Jinwoo made sure to drill this point into Essel. Even if battles break out, you must not interfere. I shall take care of everything. Understood. Why yes, Essel replied rather shyly. In any case, Jinwoo agreed to her accompanying him and hurried with his steps. A few steps behind him, Essel did her best to chase after Jinwoo while carrying luggage several times the size of her actual body. The luggage itself wasn't heavy, but keeping up with Jinwoo's walking speed was proving to be somewhat challenging to her. Jinwoo had no choice but to stop and wait now and then so she could catch up to him. We can see it now over there. After arriving on the 81st floor, Essel began checking out the map of this very floor, and then pointed at the faint outline of a castle far away from them. Jinwoo nodded his head, having already thought as much. Please wait. Essel put down the large luggage, and began rummaging through it. Soon, a ceramic liquor bottle rested in her hands. Jinwoo had to ask her about that. What are you planning to do with that now? This is a bottle of the finest liquor that the clan head of the Garroch clan enjoys. If we go and speak to him with it, the negotiation will be. Negotiation? By any chance, is your clan friendly with this Garroch or whatever clan? And no, not at all. We the aristocrats always competed bitterly against each other for a place in the demon world's nobility ranking. So, still, they are a group we can hold civilized meetings with. Hearing that, Jinwoo simply grinned. In that case, it's fine. Making one exception was enough. Just as important as finding the entry permit, he needed to raise his level, too. You, wait here. Jinwoo told her as so, and while leading his soldiers forward, headed towards the distant castle. In that short amount of time, the castle belonging to the Garroch clan was burning in flames. A monster as tall as a giant spat out a pillar of flames, and the castle's gate and walls melted down without offering any resistance whatsoever. Garroch knights rushing out in confusion were cut down by the black soldiers one by one. The castle of Garroch that looked several times more impregnable than Raideru clan's own castle was powerlessly crumbling down. Essel could only swallow down her nervous saliva. If father didn't hand over the permit willingly, then the Raideru castle might have been burning down to cinders just like the Garroch castle right about now. Kaboom! Another tower beyond the castle walls crumbled back down to earth with a loud explosion. How can anyone fight against a monster like him? Essel wiped the sweat drops trickling down to her chin, and breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that her clan had managed to skirt past a calamity. Permission to advance. Surprised by the never-before-seen system message, Jinwoo quickly confirmed Ygritte's information to make sure. Night grade. It's now possible to advance the grade after the level requirement has been met. We'll advance to the next grade when the Sovereign gives his permission. Without a shred of hesitation, Jinwoo replied to the system's message. I allow it. It began from beneath Ygritte's feet. Accompanied by screams coming from a distant place, countless black hands emerged from Ygritte's shadow, and they grabbed onto every part of him. What's this? Jinwoo observed in great interest the unfolding process of the advancement. At first, he thought that those black hands would drag Ygritte back into the shadow, but in reality, the opposite happened instead. The hands holding onto Ygritte turned into black smoke and spun around him quite ferociously, before getting absorbed by him. It was as if Ygritte was absorbing the black smoke voluntarily. Ygritte emerged from the dissipating black smoke while emitting a far greater aura than ever before. The system message informed Jinwoo of the results. Jinwoo did his best to calm his trembling heart and rechecked Ygritte's information window. Elite Knight grade. His level has been reset, but his current grade is the same as Fang's now. Before joining Jinwoo's army of the Shadow Soldiers recently, Fang's used to be the boss monster of a Ranka dungeon. Now that Ygritte was on the same grade as a creature that powerful, it could only mean that his abilities had grown by that great a deal now. And so, as he stood there checking out his soldiers while feeling rather satisfied with himself, from afar, he spotted Tank quickly approaching closer with a dead body of a demon that escaped a little while ago in his jaw. However, the light shining in Tank's eyes as he hurriedly ran closer also seemed rather suspicious, too. Those eyes, that aura. Jinwoo quietly stared, before asking aloud with a disbelieving expression on his face. Even you. Tank finally stopped right in front of Jinwoo's nose and quickly discarded the corpse he worked so hard to bring here. He then began prostrating as well, with his front legs gathered together before his head. As soon as his permission left his lips, the same type of process as Ygritte took place with Tank as well. Hands emerged from the shadow, changed to smoke, and got absorbed into Tank. And just like Ygritte, Tank also became a realm stronger than before. Tank was a temporary name Jinwoo came up with on a whim. Since a name couldn't be assigned unless a soldier was a knight grade, Tank's official moniker had been stuck as a Shadow Beast soldier. If it weren't for his twice as huge frame compared to other bears, there was no way to differentiate Tank from the others. But now, Jinwoo could freely assign a name now. A deep smile formed on his face. You finally have a name now, Tank. Feeling pleased, Tank raised its head up high and roared out loudly. You guys all did well. So, time to take a well-deserved break until the next floor. After his soldiers disappeared as shadows, Jinwoo left the castle. Essel was waiting for him outside with a rather haggard face. Excuse me, Sir Jinwoo. I told you, stop calling me a sir. Why yes. Essel hesitated somewhat after Jinwoo curtly replied to her, but eventually she spoke again. Do you know how many clans have ceased to exist by your hands? Currently, they were on the 89th floor. Essel's clan was on the 80th, so that would make 9 clans. What with her witnessing a clan being killed off every time they climbed up a floor, Essel had finally grown too anxious to remain silent. Clans of superior aristocrats are managing the floors 90 and above. They are on another level compared to the upper aristocrats you've encountered so far. Jinwoo didn't slow down his steps, but still asked her anyway. Okay, so what? How about resolving the matters with dialogue from now on? If you talk to them nicely, they might hand over the entry permit like my claw. Jinwoo cut her off there. If I was weaker than your clan, you think your people would have tried talking to me at all? Essel quickly shut her mouth up. A measly little human dared to show up uninvited to a castle full of demons, and not only that, proceeded to demand something from said castle, too. That human wouldn't have been able to return home alive. That's how it is. Jinwoo smirked deeply. Whether it was a monster from a regular dungeon, or a monster from instant dungeons, the relationship with humans would go only as far. The strong will devour the weak. Jinwoo agreed with that concept. Besides, he was urgently pressed for both the entry permits and the level ups, so he wasn't planning to give up on either of those. I'll make your Radish clan as the number 1 on the pecking order. But our clan is Raideru, you know. Essel could only complain meekly in her mind. Soon, they would be stepping into the upper floor. Could a lone man manage to destroy the superior aristocrats and their clans with nothing but his own powers? She found it pretty scary to meet his eyes anymore, so Essel quickly lowered her gaze to her feet and asked, "Why did you spare my clan?" Without a doubt, the Raideru clan would never be able to oppose this man's quest. She knew her clan's military might the best, and now that she had witnessed Jinwoo's true power, she was sure of this fact. Even then, her Raideru clan emerged relatively unscathed from this merciless man's onslaught. Why was that? She was really curious. Jinwoo entered the floor transfer magic circle and turned around to face Essel. "'Cause I find you likable." Even though she was a monster, she knew when to surrender, she knew when to negotiate, and most importantly, offered up quite a bit of useful information, too. Pardon me. Essel flinched grandly in surprise, and her neck rapidly dyed in a crimson color. She stood on the spot hesitating as she fidgeted with her fingers in a clear fluster. Their schedule had been affected by her being rooted to the spot like that, so Jinwoo asked her to get a move on. Her face still blushing deeply in red, Essel hurriedly entered the magic circle. However, she couldn't raise her head again even after arriving on the next floor. The Incheon International Airport. The representatives from the Japanese Hunter Association arrived in South Korea to discuss the matters of Jeju Island's ant problem. They already had set up a conference with the Korean counterparts. What's happening here? There is a very powerful presence nearby, stronger than you. Go-to-Ruji smirked derisively. Not too long after that, an employee from the Korean Hunters Association hurriedly ran forward to greet and receive them. I'm terribly sorry. I was delayed by all the chaos unfolding inside the airport at the moment. The employee hurriedly lowered his head in apology. Matsumoto Shija hid his dissatisfaction expertly and formed a magnanimous smile. It's fine. However, is there something going on at the airport? Oh, that. It's nothing serious, sir. It's just that a hunter from the United States has arrived just now. What brings an American hunter to South Korea? I hear that it's a personal matter, sir. I'm sure that there's nothing to worry about. I hope this person won't interfere with our business here. Go-to-Ruji's gaze was fixed in the direction of the noisy crowd of people over yonder. Most likely, that's where the American hunter was. With the subject matter being what it was, the conference was moving at a brisk pace. How do you feel about forming a united assault team comprising of top-ranked Japanese and Korean hunters? This explosive suggestion from Matsumoto Shija caused the Koreans present to show much surprise on their faces. They were all under the impression that today's conference would be to discuss the reparation Japanese would demand for the damage they had suffered. But then, the Japanese were saying they would voluntarily help with taking care of this headache. What kind of jackpot was this? We're aware that Japan enjoys an abundance of top-ranked hunters. However, it is still far too dangerous to invade Jeju Island. Go-Gun Huey also added that there were several times more of the monsters to be found on the island compared to 2 years ago, when the last subjugation effort failed. These are all the data compiled from our observation of the ants. Each ant may be strong enough to rival a high-rank hunter, but it also possesses a fatal weakness, and that's their short lifespan. Ants could only live for around 1 year at most, which means if the ant queen is removed from the equation, every ant found on Jeju Island will eventually die out in around 1 year. Indeed, the Korean attendees nodded their heads as they read the well-researched data. Only the queen needed to be eliminated. That sounded a whole lot more achievable than killing thousands of unrankable monsters that came out of a rank S gate. However, Go-Gun Huey's glare remained icy cold. What a nonsensical notion that is. He knew the truth already. He knew that the act of killing one queen was no different than actually trying to kill every single one of the thousands of those monsters. Are you making this suggestion because you don't know of ants' instincts to sacrifice themselves in order to protect their queen? If we were to kill the queen, we'd most likely have to break through the defensive wall of thousands of ants. However, what if all of the ants abandoned the ant tunnel for some reason? The ant queen lived in the deepest part of the ant tunnel. Why would the ants leave the ant tunnel unguarded when they were supposed to protect the queen as well as the eggs at all costs? There have been a total of 3 times. 3 times. There had been 3 times where such an event occurred. But, besides all that, how did Japan know so intimately about such things in the first place? The answer to this question arrived right away. The ants emptied out of their tunnel to fight when the Korean hunters landed on Jeju Island for the subjugation operations 3 times in the past. Go-Gun Huey tightly clenched his fists resting on his knees. While the hunters of South Korea risked their lives and fought, the Japanese were covertly spying on them. No one here criticized Japan for not helping South Korea out back then. But regardless, how could they use the misfortune of the neighboring nation as their research material, and then proudly reveal the results to said neighbor like this? Rank S lost his life during the 3rd failed attempt, and besides him, countless others also died. The association president Go-Gun Huey had to watch them die from a very close vantage point back then. The Japanese hunters will take on that role. Japan's rank S hunters would split into several teams and attack Jeju Island from different directions. Ants would rush out to face the intruders, and just like before, the tunnel with Ant Queen hiding in it would be emptied out. We wish to ask Korea's top hunters with the killing of the queen. South Korea's rank S hunters would sneak into the island using a helicopter, and once they kill off the queen, they escape via a helicopter again. Without a doubt, there is a good chance. There were 21 rank S hunters in Japan. In comparison, there were only 8 in South Korea. But, by excluding himself who couldn't move due to health reasons, or the other hunter who had to retire early, then realistically speaking, there were only 6 that could participate. It'll be impossible to draw and scatter the attention of thousands of ants with that number. In order to do so, they needed Japan and her 20 or so top-ranked hunters. But the real problem was, would South Korea's top hunters actually be able to kill the boss of a rank S dungeon, the Ant Queen? Is it even possible? It was then Go-Gun Huey suddenly remembered the name of Seong Jin-woo. Seong Jin-woo was strong enough to solo kill the boss of a rank S dungeon, so what if he worked together with other rank S hunters? Go-Gun Huey's heart began racing now. We can't delay this any longer. Currently, ant monsters were evolving at a rapid pace. No one could predict precisely when the entirety of the ant army would become flight capable. It could be 10 years, 5, or even right next year. Before something like that happened, the Koreans had to kill off the dastardly ants, and if they had to resort to borrowing another country's strength, then so be it. Just as Essel had alluded to earlier, the difficulty of the quest rose up steeply from the 90th floor upwards. The levels and the number of monsters guarding each floor's castle were so much incomparably higher compared to the lower floors. It got so tough that he no longer could enjoy the fruit of his current sky-high intelligence stat. His MP used to hover near the max almost all the time. But now, it fluctuated greatly every time there was a battle. That showed just how many of his shadow soldiers were destroyed and had to be revived over and over again. It wasn't some fluke that Jin-woo managed to clear the 90th floor, however. Just like a hammer shaping the raw iron that had been heated for a long time, he had been constantly polishing his skills as he climbed up from the lowest floor to get to where he was now. The clear evidence of that was his current level, which had reached 90 already. The fiercer the resistance of the superior demon aristocrats became, the stronger the attacks of Jin-woo and his shadow soldiers got in order to break past their defenses. 5th-ranked Ricardo clan, and now even the 4th-ranked Fido's clan, too. Essel no longer had any reserve energy to be shocked anymore. If every other intruder boasted strength on this scale, then rather than protecting her land, it'd be difficult to even survive from the initial assault. Instead, are all the other humans as powerful as you? Essel anxiously asked. Jin-woo combed through his memory for a bit, before making a suitable reply. Maybe there are 2 more, I think. Go-Gun Huey and Cha-Hien were those 2. Jin-woo had no doubt that they were much stronger than other rank S hunters he came in contact with so far. As for the rest, which were Baek-Yun-ho, Choi Jong-in and Im Tae-jae, he didn't feel that they were that particularly strong. Especially for Choi Jong-in, he seemed to be highly rated by everyone. But to Jin-woo's eyes, that seemed to be the case solely due to him being in charge of South Korea's top-ranked guild, the Hunters, rather than because his own skills were impressive. If I were to judge from their auras alone, Cha-Hien is several times stronger than Choi Jong-in. Without a doubt, one could still find differences in power even among the ranks of S hunters. Though, maybe the differences found within this rank would be far greater than any other ranks precisely because those who couldn't be measured by regular means were all lumped in together here. Jin-woo formed a subtle smirk. How would I perceive others after I get out of here? Just like how the feelings he got from Baek-Yun-ho differed from their first meeting to the second. Would there be a change in how he perceived the association president Go-Gun Huey? Jin-woo's heart raced faster when he thought about checking out how much he had changed. But, before I can do that, he had to clear this demon's castle instant dungeon first. There were only 4 more floors remaining. He'd get to clear this dungeon soon enough. Jin-woo turned to speak to Essel. You should go back to your people now. She had been utterly dejected after hearing that there were 2 more people like Jin-woo out there. But then, she was jolted out of her morose state and raised her head. Excuse me, I'll find my own paths on the floors above this one. Thanks to Essel guiding the way, he got to quickly locate the demon aristocrats and their castles. However, he no longer needed her help from now on. Well, my perception stat has risen up pretty high, so that's one of the reasons, but also, the auras emanating from the superior aristocrats were so strong that he could easily locate them from afar now. She didn't do much besides showing him the way, so he didn't want to walk around with one more luggage anymore if he could help it. When he finished explaining himself like that, am I no longer useful to you? Essel's complexion had paled completely. She's a funny one until the end, huh? Jin-woo suppressed his laughter as he saw Essel's reaction that always managed to exceed his expectations. You really worked hard until now. Thank you. With that, it was done. Jin-woo thought that he made a good enough goodbye just then, and he took large strides to enter the floor transfer magic circle. The hesitant Essel finally mustered up some courage to call out to Jin-woo. Excuse me. By the time he blinked, the surroundings had already changed. Jin-woo surveyed his new surroundings. There are no flames here. The horrifying flames that seemingly burned for all eternity on the lower floors were all gone, and he could only see the burnt-out remains. He raised head and spotted snowflakes falling from the sky. Snow. The color seemed a little off for real snowflakes, so he extended his hand out. The flakes falling on his hand didn't melt down. Weirdly enough, when he took a closer look, he realized that it was actually ash. Ash was falling from the sky like snow. It was then He heard the familiar mechanical beep. Jin Woo's sharpened glare was directed to the distant skies above. So, it's above me. Soon, the system alerted him to the entrance of the enemy via its trusty messages. After successfully landing on the ground, the lizard flapped its large wings and screeched out aloud. Just above the head of the lizard, Jin Woo saw a face of a demon, with a certain blue aura oozing out from it. A male creature kitted out in a flashy set of armor that only royalty might wear, while riding on the back of the large winged lizard. The 4 words could clearly be seen above the male demon's head. This boss was emitting an extraordinary aura. Cold sweat formed on Jin Woo's forehead. As befitting the boss protecting the top floor of a dungeon this massive, the creature was full of magnificent splendor. Jin Woo's gaze shifted to the side of the boss, however. The lizard this boss was riding on also possessed a name of its own. Sky Dragon. Judging from its name and its appearance, it didn't look like a demon at all. Wait a minute. If it's not a demon, then could I? Even if he worked his butt off to kill demons, he couldn't extract their shadows. So, he had already given up on acquiring a useful shadow in this place. But, what if it was a non-demon monster that could also fly? I want it. If he could extract its shadow, then definitely he would. This would be the first time he ran into a shadow he so dearly wanted to extract since encountering the leader of the White Phantoms, Baruka. Jin Woo swallowed his dry saliva. It was then Baron raised its hand towards the sky. The army of hell. Several warning bells rang one after the other in Jin Woo's ears. Along with the messages filling up his view, an army entirely consisting of demons appeared around the Demon King. Even at a casual glance, there must have been over 1,000 of them. So, this must be the beginning. Jin Woo also released all of his hidden magic energy. When Baron arrogantly lowered the hand pointing at the sky in the direction of Jin Woo, the demonic army rushed at him like a black tide. Rumble. The ground vibrated from the forceful march of the demons. Jin Woo stared at the Demon King's army as the corner of his lips arched up. I also have soldiers too, you know. Jin Woo opened his mouth. My shadows. In the blink of an eye, Jin Woo's shadow spread out to all the surrounding areas. He had activated the skill Sovereign's Territory. When the Demon King's army set foot within the darkened land, Jin Woo finally summoned his shadow soldiers. Show yourselves. His shadows stood up all at once to answer his call. Jin Woo could acutely feel the confusion and panic among the enemy's ranks. Immediately seizing upon this opening, the 2 physical-type Knight-grade soldiers, Iron and Tank, ran forward with everything they had and crashed into the enemy. Dozens of demons screamed and were flung away from the absurd strengths of the 2 shadow soldiers. Right behind them, over 100 soldiers rushed forward like a black tidal wave. And the highlight of this opening salvo obviously belonged to Ygritte. He jumped lightly over the head of Iron and landed gently on the ground, before using the swords he held in each hand to cut and slice apart every demon he could find. It was a performance befitting the grade of elite knight. By the way, Ygritte isn't the only elite knight in my army, you know. Fangs took a deep breath. His chest puffed up noticeably. Jin Woo quickly recalled all the shadow soldiers found in front of Fangs, so his giant soldier could attack without holding anything back. Massive, ferocious pillar of flames spewing out from Fang's mouth completely vaporized the demons on the ground. The flames didn't stop there, though. Fangs moved his head left to right and utterly incinerated all demons trapped with the arc of the attack. All those poor demons swallowed up by the flames couldn't even leak out a scream. 100+ shadow soldiers were overwhelming the army over 10 times their numbers. The demonic soldiers and their ranks crumbled in no time at all. But it was then Baron stopped standing back passively and finally made his move. Countless arcs of blue sparks buzzed and crackled within the wide open mouth of the boss creature. Along with that hair-raising yell, a chill-inducing beam of blue light enveloped the shadow soldiers. Lightning. Jin Woo's eyes widened from sheer surprise. Soldiers getting swept up in the blue electrical storm disintegrated in an instant, while those that managed to avoid instant death stood still in their spots as if they were frozen solid. It's not regular lightning. Lightning bolts containing horrifying destructive power, as well as side effects of stunning their targets, fell all over the place. And of course, one of these blue-colored electrical storms also headed for Jin Woo as well. Quite unlike his shadow soldiers, he didn't receive a single lick of damage, however. All burn-related damage was absorbed by the wind robe he currently had on, and as for the lightning stun effect, his abnormal status immunity buff dealt with it. Jin Woo dashed towards Baron right away. If he didn't stop the boss's AoE magic right now, there was a good chance that the flow of battle would shift away from his favor. Baron's glare landed on Jin Woo. Another ear-screeching yell exploded out from the boss's wide-open mouth, and blue streaks of lightning rained all around Jin Woo. However, Baron flinched grandly upon realizing that the concentrated lightning attacks had no effect on Jin Woo. He sensed the boss's agitation quite clearly. Utilizing the skill dash that had reached the maximum achievable level, Jin Woo closed the distance in the blink of an eye and jumped up high in the air. Baron also unsheathed its sword. Jin Woo's reverse gripped Baruka's dagger and the Demon King's blade, infused with bluish flames, clashed face to face. Boom! A huge explosion of noise spread out. Baron was shoved off the Sky Dragon, while Jin Woo was flung away by the rebound as well. Jin Woo stopped rolling on the ground and got up at the same time as Baron. They glared at each other only for a brief moment. Both of them dashed towards each other with everything they had almost out of pure instinct. Baron spat out more blue sparks from his mouth, as if it had sensed that an opportunity had arrived. The intensity of the blue sparks crackling within Baron's mouth increased by a notch. Jin Woo heightened his senses as much as he could to get ready. I can do this. No, he simply had to do this. With time slowing down substantially in his perspective, Jin Woo calmly evaded each and every single one of the blue arcs of lightning flying right at him. As Baron's figure got closer and closer, Jin Woo began recalling his memories of the demon's castle one by one. Even during that, he still managed to evade the blue lightnings. Thanks to grant him this great power to fight evenly against an absurdly strong monster like this. As he climbed up each floor, he was molded and refined further and further. It was as if he was being trained precisely for this moment. So, how could he not feel grateful right now? Swish! Baron slashed down diagonally with his sword, and Jin Woo raised Baruka's dagger in his right hand to block it, before using the Night Killer to stab the Demon King's shoulder. Crack! The weapon designed specifically to tear through the enemy's armor dug deeply into Baron's shoulder. Jin Woo momentarily thought that he could hear Baron's soundless scream just then. He yanked the Night Killer out. Flames of rage erupted within Baron's eyes. The Demon King began panting out rather laboriously. Finally, the boss made his move. Jin Woo's two daggers and Baron's sword swished and swung and clashed against each other countless times, leaving behind several wounds on their bodies. Every time their blades collided, the ground around the two caved in by the shock waves emanating from the collision of the magic energy. A deep frown formed on Jin Woo's forehead. Even with such a deep wound on his shoulder, as befitting the title of the Demon King, Baron's powers were nothing to scoff at. Jin Woo felt aching coming from his wrists. He realized that he'd be in a disadvantageous position if things continued on in this fashion. I need to break this deadlock. Jin Woo and Baron both had two hands. However, Jin Woo also possessed a hidden third hand. Ruler's Reach. Out of the blue, a powerful impact force pushed Baron down on one knee. Even before Baron could recover from his confusion, Jin Woo's fist slammed hard into the Demon King's face. The terrifying physical power from the strength stat that had exceeded 200 rapidly shaved away the boss monster's HP. And finally, Jin Woo placed almost all of his strength into the raised right fist. In an instant, his shoulder and arm muscles expanded greatly, and the air around him became so heavy that it actually sank lower. An enormous amount of magic energy pooling around his right arm forced all sounds away, and instantly, the surroundings became eerily quiet. Within this brief respite of silence, Jin Woo looked down at the boss below him and murmured, "Thanks for everything." Of course, there was no reply. The Demon King only glared at Jin Woo with hatred deeply burning in its eyes. "I'm sure you'll never understand what I'm trying to say here." Even then, he wanted to convey this emotion welling up inside his chest. After he gave his honest thanks, Jin Woo landed the final hit against the owner of this demon's castle. Kaboom! And then, he was greeted by the sound of TTI ring, as well as several messages that made him feel even better. Phew! Jin Woo spat out a short sigh of relief. This was the moment his long march that started from the very first floor of the demon's castle dungeon was drawing to a close here on this 100th floor. He closed his eyes for a moment in order to get a grip on his turbulent emotions, only for the image of his mom's face to pop up. Rather than feeling elated, Jin Woo felt anxious instead from the list of item discovered messages that continued to pop up, because he couldn't spot the item he was looking for. However, he cried out in excitement as soon as he spotted the very last item. Purified blood of the Demon King. It's here. Jin Woo quickly acquired all the items and lifted up the item that must have been the purified blood of the Demon King. Rarity. Type. Ingredient. This is the liquid created from purifying the blood of Baron, the sovereign of the demons. Possesses immense magical energy, but even after going through the purifying process, the blood still retains strong toxins. In order to use the blood as a medical ingredient, both the fragment of the world tree and spring water from the Forest of Echoes are needed to neutralize the toxin. The red liquid sloshed inside a clear glass bottle according to the angle it was held. This is the blood of the Demon King. He already possessed the other two ingredients, fragment of the world tree, and the spring water from the forest of echoes. So, what was there to hesitate about? Jinwoo promptly summoned the crafting skill window. Consumable, divine water of life. Different from the past, the words divine water of life was now blinking constantly. When he checked the details, the words crafting possible immediately caught his attention. Crafting possible. Ingredients. 1. Purified blood of the Demon King. 2. Fragment of the world tree. 3. Spring water from the forest of echoes. Jinwoo was in a hurry to see the finished article, so he didn't waste any more time and chose to start the crafting process. Start. Jinwoo's eyes widened. Are you telling me only now that the odds of success, as well as the number of completed items, will depend on the intelligence stat? If you were stupid, then you couldn't even craft anything. It did sound somewhat logical, so Jinwoo could only nod his head. In the meantime, the countdown steadily ticked on. Why did the words percentage of crafting success get on his nerves so much? The only solace he could take away right now was the fact that he had at least woke up to the importance of the intelligence stat quickly enough to invest a lot of extra stat points there. That's what I'm talking about. Jinwoo had been waiting anxiously until then. But as soon as the success message popped up, he raised his hands high up into the sky. However, he quickly discovered something a bit odd. The bottle containing the blood of the Demon King still remained in his right hand. Well, the amount of blood has decreased by a little, but Jinwoo tilted his head before summoning the fragment of the world tree and the spring water from the forest of echoes from his inventory. The only thing that appeared on the ground was the slightly shaved on the edge fragment of the world tree, though. He accessed his inventory and searched, but couldn't find the spring water anywhere. Could it be? Feeling a bit suspicious, he confirmed the crafting skill window, and his suspicion was soon answered in full. Out of the 3 ingredients, only the spring water showed 0. So, it's something like, not all the ingredients will be used up, but only the necessary amount. Is that it? The crafting process must have come to a stop because the spring water from the Forest of Echoes had run out, unlike with other 2 ingredients. From the get-go, he got this feeling that the crafting process wouldn't have required a lot of the Demon King's blood. As for the fragment of the world tree, it was a gigantic piece of lumber when he had initially acquired it to begin with. It was rather obvious that the spring water contained within a small bottle would be the first one to run out. Jinwoo grinned widely in satisfaction. Well, it's not a bad result for me regardless, because as long as he could find more of that spring water from the Forest of Echoes in the future, he'd get to craft more of this divine water of life. Hold on, there's another problem to consider, isn't there? Jinwoo was desperate for a bottle of this divine water, yet now there were 6 wooden bottles waiting for him on the ground, so it was rather difficult for him to calm his wildly beating heart. Rarity S. Type consumable. A mysterious liquid medicine that cures any and all illnesses through powerful magic contained within. The effect will only manifest after 1 whole bottle has been consumed. Would this item truly cure his mother's illness? I guess I'll find out later today. His heart palpitated faster. Jinwoo carefully stored away all 6 bottles in his inventory, as well as the remaining ingredients. Even then, he still had lots of other items to go through. 1 ring, 1 longsword, 2 short swords, and 2 japdams. Because Baron was the boss of a rank S dungeon, it sure coughed up a lot of loot. I've got a pressing matter to attend to, but he shouldn't miss out on other things because of that, no. Wasn't there an old saying about the more of a hurry you are in, you should take the longer of the routes available or some such? Jinwoo looked behind him and found his shadow soldiers standing at attention in rows, having massacred an army 10 times their number. Behind his boys, dead demons were strewn about everywhere. What about the Sky Dragon? Jinwoo's wandering gaze hurriedly searched for the monster that the Demon King rode around in. Worryingly enough, all he could spot were the corpses of demons piled up on high, with not a hint of the Sky Dragon anywhere. Wait, it couldn't have flown away during the fight, right? Thankfully though, his worries didn't last for long. Iron was dragging a limp corpse behind him. It was none other than the Sky Dragon, Kaizelin. Iron, nicely done. Maybe Iron felt embarrassed by Jinwoo's praise, which was a first in a while, because he began scratching the back of his head. Of course, it was still the back of his helmet, though. Jinwoo lightly patted the shoulder of Iron and stood before the Sky Dragon's body. Jinwoo extended his hand out. Rise up. The shadow extraction worked without any problems whatsoever, perhaps due to his much higher level. Accompanied by the death throes of a beast, a creature covered in some type of black gas crawled out of the Sky Dragon's shadow. The dead dragon's shadow immediately recognized his new owner and lowered his head in front of Jinwoo. Oh, Jinwoo formed a surprised expression. Since he didn't get to witness the creature fighting, he only assumed it to be a mount and not much else, but it must have been pretty handy in battles, because the Sky Dragon's shadow started right away as a night grade. Kaizelin. No, wait. Inexplicably, he thought that name was a bit too long. Kaizel, the Sky Dragon, now bestowed with a brand new name, raised his head up high into the sky and spat out a lengthy roar. Everyone, you all worked hard. With those words, Jinwoo stored all of his shadow soldiers, including the new addition of Kaizel, back into his shadow. It was almost time to make his exit from the demon's castle. There was one more thing still remaining, however. Jinwoo opened the inbox, where the quest completion messages were still waiting for him. As soon as he answered, the list of rewards popped up in his view. 1. Highest grade rune stone. 2. Bonus stat points plus 30. 3. Unknown reward. The so-called shadow exchange skill. Just what could it be? As he had been curious about this highest grade rune stone ever since the beginning of the quest, Jinwoo chose to take that one first. Okay, I choose the first reward for the time being. After that message came and gone, he felt a small rock residing within his palm. When he brought the hand closer to his nose and opened it, he found a jet black runestone resting there. Its color was completely different from the regular rune stones. Also, its hue came across as so much more mysterious compared to the average black color. Crumble. Unlike in the past, when he physically had to break the stone, the item crumbled all on its own the moment he thought about squeezing his hand. The pitch-black aura rising up from the shattered runestone slowly enveloped Jinwoo, before getting absorbed into his body. He hurriedly checked his skill window. Class-specific skill. Mana required to activate, none. The summoner can switch locations with the designated shadow soldier. Once activated, you must wait 3 hours of cooldown period before being able to use the skill again. The cooldown period will change according to the skill's level. Jinwoo's eyes widened as he read the skill's description. Sure, it might be handicapped by the limitation of the cooldown period, but no, instead, it was an incredible skill that perhaps necessitated that cooldown period to make it fair. Doesn't this mean it's possible to switch locations regardless of where my shadow soldier is? Depending on how he used it, this was almost on the level of teleportation. Jinwoo was about to summon a shadow soldier and test this new skill out right away, but quickly changed his mind. If I'm to test it out, I might as well try it with a soldier that's really far away. Thankfully, he did leave behind a handful of soldiers outside the demon's castle. He hid 3 of them in his sister's shadow, while 5 were patrolling the district as of this moment. There's nothing to think about, is it? He didn't know what kind of an after effect the skill might have, and also, he couldn't just haphazardly pop out near his sister's location either, and that was after setting aside the possibility of his sister freaking out, too. So, he sought out the signal emitted from one of the 5 shadow soldiers patrolling around his district and zeroed in on it. Shadow exchange. As soon as Jinwoo opened his mouth, as if gravity was powerfully pulling him down, he was rapidly sucked into his own shadow. Jinwoo took a quick look around. Tick, tick. A streetlight that continued to flicker as if it was broken. A hand-pulled wooden cart leaning precariously against a wall. An electrical pole with a half-torn flyer stiller stuck to it. He found himself in a deserted alleyway he often had to walk past when heading back home. Hey, this is the suburb I live in, isn't it? Somewhat coincidentally, it was also the exact same spot where he issued the 5 shadows to start patrolling the district as well. My location really changed. Jinwoo did feel deeply stunned at the moment, but still, he somehow managed to remain calm as he checked the shadow beneath his feet. Just like when he summoned his shadow soldiers, he too rose up from the shadow. Although the visitation hours had long passed now, Jinwoo didn't hesitate once as he summoned the shadow of the Sky Dragon, Kaizel. Even though this was his first time, he already felt a sense of familiarity as if he had been riding on Kaizel for a long time. He figured that flying in the air wouldn't pose any problems since he felt this way. It doesn't matter if someone tries to stop me. He wasn't talking about the hospital staff. Even if cops or the military tried to block him, he knew he had the power to break past them. And, at least for this moment, he didn't want anyone to obstruct his path. Let's go. A meeting was still taking place within the walls of the Hunters Association, even though the hours were getting late. The Korea-Japan cooperative raid was already around the proverbial corner, and the association was doing everything in their power to ensure the successful subjugation of Jeju Island's ant monsters. Here is the data sent by the Japanese. The agent of the association pressed a button on the remote. Soon, the giant screen was filled with the footage of the ant monsters, captured by the magic power sensing camera attached to a Japanese satellite. These were the records taken during the first, second, and the third subjugation attempts. Go-Gun Huey's eyes narrowed to a slit. Indeed, excluding the Ant Queen and its guards, every single ant did leave the ant tunnel. The ant monsters moved just as the Japanese said they would. Although the existence of the guardian ants was a worrisome variable in the equation, it was also normal to find a few guardian-type monsters protecting their bosses within higher-ranked dungeons, as well. Still, it was hard to claim that there was no risk. The top man in the Korean side of the operation, Go-Gun Huey, quickly thought of one of the worst-case situations. What are the odds of the ants turning around quicker than anticipated after realizing their queen is in danger? The Japanese had already thought about that too. However, they have said they would use interference radio wave signal. Radio wave signal. According to their research, they discovered that the ant monsters use specific radio waves to communicate among themselves. Indeed, if one wanted to order an army of several thousands as one unit, then a method to send out commands should exist. Go-Gun Huey nodded his head. And they can interrupt the communication of ants with radio waves. That's what they said, sir. So, they want us to fully concentrate on killing the Ant Queen, is it? The subjugation plan itself was quite simple. Even though it was simple, there was a higher chance of succeeding when compared to other plans, as well. Yet, why did Go-Gun Huey feel so anxious like this? He rested his chin on his hands. Could it be that I'm worried about? It was then. Go-Gun Huey spun his head towards the outside of the window, his brows shooting up high. Everyone inside the meeting room flinched at the sudden movement of the association president. Section Chief Wu Jin-cheol, here to guard his boss from the side, rapidly walked in closer. Did something happen, sir? Just now, an astonishing wave of magic power flooded in from a faraway place beyond the windows. Although it only lasted for a brief moment and quickly disappeared from Go-Gun Huey's perception, he still had felt the full brunt of that. As their association president continued to stare into the distance outside the window, the agents had to stop the meeting and cautiously ask their boss, "Sir?" Only then did Go-Gun Huey shift his gaze away. Baek Yun-ho asked, his head still looking over his shoulder. "Did you sense that?" Min Byung-gu replied testily. "I may be retired now, but my rank hasn't dropped, you know." These two men had been sharing a bottle of cheap liquor for the first time in a long while inside a certain pajangmacha until then. But now, only the heavy silence flowed between them. Baek Yun-ho eventually shifted his gaze back to his front. What was that just now? Maybe Choi Jong-in and Cha Hee-in started fighting over the shares of the Hunters Guild. Who knows? Min Byung-gu had been frozen on the spot with a shot glass in his hand, but suddenly broke out in a fit of giggles before emptying the soju down his throat. Baek Yun-ho formed a dumbfounded expression. "Don't tell me you were trying to make me laugh with that. But wasn't it funny, Hyung?" "Never mind. Forget it." But, then again, including his sense of humor, Min Byung-gu could be considered a bit strange in the head. No doubt about that. I mean, he's supposed to be the first rank S hunter in the world to retire when he's still all healthy. And the like, isn't he? Not only the first in the world, but he was also the only one so far, too. Just how many people out there would willingly give up on the ridiculous amount of wealth a rank S hunter could earn, simply because he wasn't interested anymore? Min Byung-gu wasn't even from a wealthy stock, to begin with. Sensing Baek Yun-ho's questioning gaze, Min Byung-gu asked back, "Hyung, are you really going to participate?" "Yeah, but you saw how Yoon Seok Hyung died. That's why I must go back." Min Byung-gu looked at his drinking partner with a bit of confusion on his face. Baek Yun-ho emptied his shot glass and continued on. "If we leave the ants alone, the entirety of South Korea would end up like that place. Since when did you become this patriotic?" "Well, we're supposed to do it sooner rather than later, so might as well come up with a nice-sounding excuse while I'm at it. Don't you agree?" The guilds could not decline the association's summons. "I won't be participating. I will never go back there. If you ask to see me, hoping to change my mind, you might as well give." "That's not it." Baek Yun-ho put the cash down for the alcohol and stood up. The bottle was empty by then. "I came to say goodbye, just in case. I don't know if we'll get to sit down for a drink again, after all." Hyung. Min Byung-gu gave up on changing Baek Yun-ho's mind. Baek Yun-ho already knew full well the dangers of the subjugation plan, perhaps better than anyone else. Even then, he's still going. Baek Yun-ho's expression wasn't of someone being dragged away despite feeling deeply scared. No, rather, he carried the face of someone getting ready to step on and kill as many ants as he could with this opportunity instead. Indeed, he seemed to be eagerly waiting for the day of the subjugation. Min Byung-gu could only chew on the snacks with a helpless expression on his face, only for his chopsticks to stop moving shortly thereafter. "Wait a minute. I can't think of that many hunters who don't like fighting against monsters, now can I?" There were a few like that among the healers, but on the flip side, those folks simply loved to heal others instead. Min Byung-gu dazedly stared at the bowl of oden soup before roughly scratching the side of his head. Could it be that only those who like fighting become awakened? There was no way that could be true. Jin-woo quickly arrived in the hospital. Let's see. It was room number 305, right? He wasn't planning to enter the hospital through the front door to begin with. While still riding on Kaisel, he searched for the windows of his mother's hospital room. Ruler's reach. The curtains covering the windows silently parted sideways. He saw the quietly sleeping sight of his mother on the bed. She looked exactly the same as the last time he came to visit. Jin-woo used Ruler's reach one more time to open the window and silently stepped into the hospital room. Kaisel had disappeared into his shadow by then. He soon stood by the side of the bed. His heart was pounding madly now that the time he had been waiting for so long was here. If something goes wrong, I won't be able to do anything. His mother had been unconscious for a very long time. There was a chance that she might not even be able to swallow the divine water of life, and even if she did, there was no guarantee that she'd be okay afterwards. However, Jin-woo got to witness plenty of miracles the system caused so far. If it happened to someone else, he'd never have believed a word of it. One didn't even have to look far for tangible evidence, either. Wasn't he the walking proof of those miracles? I was a Ranky, yet now look at me standing here. All of his achievements, they were due to the system's powers. Pop, his hands that stayed steady during the life or death battle against the Demon King were trembling greatly now. Jin-woo took a deep breath to calm his mind. If I make a mistake here, my mother will bear the cost, instead. The moment he told himself there could not be any mistake whatsoever, he was able to regain the usual calmness right away. Even his hands stopped shaking. Soon, the divine water of life slowly trickled into her slightly parted lips. Jin-woo didn't rush it and made sure to let only a tiny strand enter her mouth. This wound. He then noticed the burn marks on the side of his mom's neck. The burns continued down the back of her neck, too. Although he couldn't see it from this angle, Jin-woo knew only too well that the burn mark extended from the entirety of the back of her neck and her shoulders to some part of her head. She got that because of me, after all. Back then, he only wanted to wash his mother's hair inside the public bathhouse. He wanted to emulate what his mother did when she washed the hair of very young Jin-ah. However, the young Jin-woo, who never had much of an opportunity to visit public bathhouses before, lacked the ability to tell apart the temperature of the water. Mom flinched a little, but didn't move from the spot even when her flesh was visibly cooked red. All because she feared that the hot water might end up on Jin-ah's face. She simply held her daughter tight in her embrace. She didn't make any noise. The belated screams came from not his mother, but from the mouths of the aunties nearby. Oh my God. Someone help. Jin-woo, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? The young Jin-woo thought that he'd be scolded for sure. He could never forget the events of that day and those words his mother said to him. Not even now. And here I am, thinking that I don't owe anyone anything. After their father went missing, it was Mom alone who raised the siblings Jin-woo and Jin-ah. He hated owing someone, or someone owing him, so he made sure that such a thing never happened, but still, he owed his mother a debt that he could never possibly repay. Jin-woo's eyes widened. A little bit of color was returning to Mom's once slightly pale face. Like color spreading on the black and white TV screen, a healthy complexion was spreading over his mother's skin. Every passing second felt like an hour to him. How much time did pass like that? Jin-woo's mother slowly opened her eyes. Her gaze wandered around for a moment or two, before stopping at Jin-woo. Who? No, wait, could you be? Jin-woo. Jin-woo's heart nearly fell just then, but he managed to nod his head a little. It was obvious that she didn't recognize him right away. 4 years had passed by already, and he had grown by a lot since then, too. Jin-woo didn't rush things and quietly waited. Like water slowly filling up an empty bowl, blurry memories of the past filled up the empty hole of the last 4 years in Jin-woo's mother, Park Jaeun-hai's mind bit by bit. How long have I been lying here, son? It's been 4 years, Mom. He could have also added that it was 4 years and a few days, but he didn't. His mother currently needed as much calmness, a sense of stability, so he did his best to sound and look normal. But Mom was still taken back by the revelation of 4 years, and she hurriedly asked him, "What about Jin-ah? Is your sister all right?" It was then Jin-woo felt something powerful welling up from deep within his heart. She had been teetering on the edge of life and death for the last 4 years, yet the first thing she asked after waking up was the well-being of her daughter. If he hadn't bitten down on his lower lip, he might have broken down right there and then. It's no time to worry about that girl, you know. He wanted to say that out loud, but he suppressed his emotions and formed a thin smile instead. Yes, Mom, she's doing okay. His mother sighed, her expression one of genuine relief. Mom was holding his left hand even before he had noticed it. Mom, thank you, son. You kept your promise. Promise? Well, I forgot. Then again, he had always thought it was the most obvious thing in the world, so it was possible that he didn't consciously see it as a promise. The so-called eternal sleep disorder, where you'd fall deeper and deeper into slumber until you'd never wake up again. It became harder for Mom to carry on with her daily life as drowsiness frequently assaulted her without warning with every passing day. Out of the blue, though, she asked Jin-woo for a favor. If Mom can't wake up one day, will you promise me to take good care of your little sister? She carried a smile of a mother asking her child for a simple errand back then. That was why he had been enduring until now. He didn't resent her at all, because all he did was to take over the burden his mother had been carrying until then. However, Mom tightly squeezed his hand as if she knew everything. My son, it must have been hard for you. Jin-woo tried to smile like he had done before to assuage his mother's worries, as if nothing of note had happened until then. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that. All the tears he held back until then traveled down his face, and his lips parted all on their own. Yeah. What was that? The director of Seoul Ilsan Hospital, Dr. Lee Seong-chul, got to hear a rather stunning piece of news. A patient suffering from eternal sleep disorder had woken up from the terminal stage of the illness. Are you telling me the truth? Yes, director. I've confirmed it personally. As a doctor, his ears would perk up greatly if such an event occurred in someone else's hospital. Yet the patient in question was actually in his own. Who knew such a jackpot would come knocking at my door? The exceptional brain of Director Lee Seong-chul began punching some numbers in his mental calculator. Isn't this an unprecedented event in the whole world? You're correct, Director. Nicely done. Dr. Choi, I beg your pardon. It doesn't matter how it happened. We can always cook something up later. But it's only right and proper that the doctor in charge is praised for the work well done when a patient gets better. Am I wrong? The patient's legal guardian requested for immediate discharge. What was that? No, that definitely could not be allowed. Reporters would only come to the hospital if the patient was still here. No, never mind the reporters. He needed to keep the patient here in order to figure out how the disorder had been cured, to begin with. Have you heard about Mr. Seong Jin-woo? Seong Jin-woo, was he a powerful politician? He's the hunter who was evaluated as a rank S recently. A rank S. Here was the reason why Dr. Choi was being so cautious. Who would have guessed that the patient's guardian happened to be a rank S hunter? Begin the discharge procedure right away. Indeed, we should do that. Yes, we must. A smile of a good-natured person remained on Lee Seong-chul's lips. They should definitely release the patient now. As soon as she got the call, Jin-ah dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. Jin-woo had been sitting on a chair next to Mom's bed, and when he sensed his fast-approaching sister, quickly stood up. Right then, the door to his mom's hospital room was flung open. Mom. She hadn't even crossed the doorway yet, but Jin-ah's face was already a messy mixture of streaming tears and snot falling from her nose. Oh my gosh, my little girl, you've grown up so much. The last time their mom, Park Jae-hai, saw her daughter was when she was still in middle school. She gazed at her grown-up daughter with a surprised expression, but shortly afterwards, opened her arms wide to welcome Jin-ah with a warm smile on her face. When that happened, Mom, Jin-ah tightly embraced her mother. As he looked on at his sister in his mom's embrace, as well as his mom's gentle and warm expression, a satisfied smile automatically formed on his lips. My effort wasn't in vain. It felt like he was being fully rewarded for all the hard work he had put in right at this moment. Also, he felt as if something hard and stubborn stuck in the corner of his heart had finally melted down and was now flowing away, out of him. In that case, should he leave the two of them alone for a while? At least, until his little sister found a way to get a hold of her overflowing emotions. There was a scary amount of missed calls and text messages left on his phone that he couldn't even dare to attempt replying to a select few, never mind all of them. Jin-woo scrolled the list of the missed calls and texts before giving up and closing the window altogether. Well, if it's something urgent, I'm sure they'll contact me again. He quickly gave up on replying and instead accessed the internet browser. But then, he clicked on the online news portal without thinking too much, only to perform a grand facepalm. Photos of Kaisel were plastered all over the various internet news sites. From the vicinity of his house all the way to this hospital, the distance between the 2 points was rather considerable. But he figured nothing serious would happen because he was traveling at such a high speed. But this? It was only a short flight, but we got photographed a lot, didn't we? The only fortunate thing here was that the photos didn't show him riding on the back of Kaisel. While he was thinking of this and that, his phone began vibrating. Hello? Seong Jin-woo Hunter Nim. A baritone yet still bright voice of an old man came out. Jinwoo immediately recalled the owner of that voice. Association President. Yes, this is the Association President Go-Gun Huey speaking. Why is he giving me a call? What prompted the one and only Association President to give him a call like this? What's the matter, sir? I'm sure you've heard of the news by now. What news? Jinwoo tilted his head a bit, before realizing that this wouldn't do and asked again. I'm not sure what news you're talking about. Wait, could it be? You haven't seen the news lately? Wow, I guess the speed of news getting around these days is nothing to scoff at. Jinwoo readily admitted to his wrongdoing. I'm sorry about that, but I'll make sure to be more careful next time. Excuse me. Only after hearing the confused voice of Go-Gun Huey did Jinwoo realize that he was deeply mistaken about something here. Wait, wasn't he calling me about Kaisel? If not, what else could the news outlets be talking about instead? The dual dungeon, the red gate, clearing the rank of dungeons, the beat of avarice, etc. Now that he thought about, there were quite a few potential topics of contention instead. Can you clarify what happened? Looks like you really haven't heard anything yet. I've been spending some time in a location recently where contacting outside was difficult, actually. He wasn't lying about that, technically speaking. Go-Gun Huey's voice betrayed how surprised he was, but then it became even graver than before. Hunter Nim. According to Jinwoo's experience, this could only mean that the reason for this call should be brought up now. I'd like to come and discuss something with you face to face. Will that be okay with you? Jinwoo's suspicion grew even larger compared to when he first answered the phone. Calling me on the phone isn't enough, so the association president wishes to come here and see me personally. Just how much of an important matter was this to make someone as busy as him personally move? Even then, Jinwoo glanced in the direction of Mom's hospital room. I can't ask the association president to come here. He might have to come up with bullshit stories related to his mother if that happened. No, I'll go over there instead. 300 people. Unlike some others, he didn't speak about the neighboring nation's misfortune with an easygoing attitude. That one ant managed to kill that many people, or the Japanese too slow to respond. That's not correct. Go-Gun Huey shook his head. From what I hear, the Japanese hunters only took 30 minutes to get to the location. But in that short period of time, a small village was wiped off the map. Japan boasted one of the most advanced hunter systems in all of Asia, and a country like that had to experience such a level of devastation. So what would happen if an ant entered the South Korean border? Go-Gun Huey had viewed that footage multiple times already, but he still was overcome with a chilling premonition of an impending crisis every time he did. Before it's too late, we need to destroy the ants once and for all. The subjugation operation would get underway in 4 days' time. The Japanese had been demanding the release of the final list of all Korean hunters participating in the operation for a few days now. However, using his authority as the leader of the Korean side, Go-Gun Huey delayed the announcement of the final list. The reason for that was simple, because no one could get in touch with Jinwoo until now. We'll go to Jeju Island and get rid of the ants found there. He formed a pleading expression next. And that is why we need your help, Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim. Next up, Go-Gun Huey's expression shifted to one of anxiety. If Jinwoo refused to participate, then there was nothing anyone could do. He was no longer affiliated with the association, and he was not duty-bound to carry out the demands of the association either. In other words, the final decision rested solely on his whim. After lengthy deliberation, he opened his mouth. After ending the meeting with the association president, Jinwoo stood up from the seat to leave, only to sense something and shifted his head in that direction. What was that just now? In a place not too far from here, he sensed clashes of magical energy. Could it be a dungeon break? Did something happen? Go-Gun Huey had stood up from his seat first and walked over to the doorway to bid Jinwoo goodbye, only to turn around and question him when the youth failed to move from the spot. Well, I don't think it's anything serious, but it seems that hunters are fighting each other nearby. But that can't be. Go-Gun Huey chuckled loudly. Which foolhardy hunters would dare to fight each other near the association's HQ? There was no way such a thing would happen. No, wait. The direction of Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim is looking at. A possibility formed in Go-Gun Huey's mind. I believe that rank S hunters are doing some light exercises in the gymnasium. Maybe you're talking about that. Light exercises, is it? If that was the case, then for sure, the continuous yet restrained clashes of magical energy made sense. Jinwoo nodded his head. I see. Go-Gun Huey's eyes looking at the youth were filled with undisguised surprise. He can sense something like that from this distance. The association's gymnasium was designed to greatly minimize the amount of magic energy leaking outside. In actual reality, even Go-Gun Huey himself couldn't sense anything. But then, not only had Jinwoo sensed the minuscule amount leaking out from there, he even correctly guessed that different magic energies were clashing with one another, too. Just how highly attuned are his senses? It was simply impossible to even take a wild guess. All right, would you like to take a look if you're interested? I believe that Mr. Goto Ryuji is also present there. Jinwoo was thinking of taking a look-see with an open mind, only to stop in his tracks. If you say Goto Ryuji, do you mean? Yes, it is him. If you were a hunter, no, even if you weren't a hunter, you'd have at least heard of that name once. The name that belonged to one of the most powerful hunters in existence. It is indeed that Goto Ryuji. He's currently staying in the country to aid in building a good repertoire and a sense of camaraderie in both the Korean and Japanese participants. Since he's planning to leave tomorrow, if you don't meet him today, you might not get another opportunity in the future. Not only were Korea's best hunters gathered in one place, but even Japan's best was also here too. Obviously, I can't miss this chance. Jinwoo accepted Gogun Huey's suggestion with a deeply interested expression. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.